Ah, my friend, how good it is that you came. Sit here with me for a little while. You know, there are days when life seems dry. Dry of hope, dry of joy, dry even of that faith that was once so vibrant within us. We look to the sky, upwards, and all we see is a blue without promise, a punishing sun. And we ask ourselves, has he forgotten me? I want to tell you a story today. It's not a story about distant kings or prophets. It's the story of people like me, like you. It's the story of Joshua and Amelia. Imagine a piece of land that once yielded much corn, much beans, land that held the memories of Joshua's parents and Amelia's parents. Now, imagine that same land 10 years later. 10 years, count with me, 3,650 days, one after the other, and not a single drop of rain. What was once a green carpet was now a sheet of tile-colored dust. Their wattle and daub house, which had once smelled sweetly of Amelia's coffee mixed with the scent of damp earth, now it only smelled of dust. The dust was so fine that it seeped under the door, covered the furniture with a grey shroud, got into their noses and throats. The silence was the loudest thing in that place. There was no birdsong, there was no buzzing of insects, there was no sound of the wind rustling the leaves, because there were no leaves left. Joshua, a 70-year-old man, had hands that looked like maps of that dry land, thick, cracked, furrowed. Every morning, even before the sun rose, he did the same thing. He would get out of his creaking bed, put on his old boots, grab his worn straw hat, and walk to the gate. And there he would stand, looking east, waiting. He wasn't expecting the sun, because the sun was the enemy. He was expecting a cloud, even a small cloud, dark and heavy. Amelia, with her hair as white as cotton, watched from the kitchen window. She saw her husband's shoulders, drooping more each day. In the early years, their faith was loud. They gathered the neighbors, they sang, they prayed aloud, "Send rain, Lord, water our land." But the neighbors left, one by one. They sold what they could, put what was left in a cart, and went away to the city, to other states. Now, Joshua and Amelia's prayer was a whisper, a tired whisper, almost without strength, made inside the dark room before going to sleep. "Remember us, Father. The 10th year was the worst. The land wasn't just dry, it was dead, cracked, with fissures so deep it seemed as if the world itself had broken apart. The cattle were gone, the chickens, the last ones, were gone. All that remained were those two old people and a well that yielded a bucket of muddy water a day. Joshua looked at the sky, and the sky seemed made of bronze, a relentless blue, almost mocking his insignificance. Joshua's pain wasn't just hunger, it wasn't just thirst. It was the pain of seeing his father's legacy turn to dust between his fingers. It was the pain of God's silence. 10 years praying for the same thing, 10 years receiving the same silence in response. Their faith was as cracked as the ground they stood on. The question that hung in the dry, hot air was no longer, when will it rain? The question, the one they didn't dare ask aloud, was, is it worth continuing to pray? The soft music continues, but with a note of melancholy and perseverance. And the days, my dear, the days dragged on. The routine of waiting is a terrible thing, because it consumes us from the inside. The sun rose, scorching. Joshua patched a fence that no longer protected anything. Amelia swept the dust from inside the house, only to see it return minutes later. It was useless work, but it was what kept them going. It was the stubbornness of life. Sometimes, far away on the horizon, a dark cloud would appear. Oh, Joshua's heart would leap. He would run inside. "Amelia, look! It looks like it's coming now!" And the two of them would stand on the porch, hand in hand, watching. But the cloud would pass by sideways. It would veer away. as if an invisible hand were pushing it away from their land, and each false hope was like another small nail hammering into the cross of their patience. "I think God has forgotten the way here, Amelia," Joshua said one night, his voice choked with emotion. Amelia, who was the silent fortress of that couple, stopped mending his sock. She looked at the kerosene lamp, the small flame struggling against the darkness. "He doesn't forget the way, Joshua. Maybe we're the ones who have forgotten what his voice sounds like." But it was difficult. How could one hear the voice of God when the only sound was the dry wind whistling through the loose roof tiles? How could one believe in life when everything around screamed death? The well. The well was the heart of the house, and it was dying. Each day the bucket took longer to fill, the water came out dirtier. Amelia had to strain it through, the cloth 3-4 times so they could drink it. They knew it was running out, and when the well dried up, it would be the end. Joshua began to have deep doubts. "Did we do wrong to stay, Amelia? Everyone's gone. Everyone's trying to make a life for themselves somewhere else. And here we are, arguing with God. Shouldn't we have left too? Is our faith really faith, or is it just pride?" It was a dangerous question, a question that shakes the foundation of an entire life. 10 years. Children were born, grew up, and had never seen rain. For them, rain was a story the old men told. Amelia, however, clung to one thing, the old Bible with its worn cover that had belonged to her mother. She no longer had the strength to read the small print by the light of the lamp, but she ran her hand over those thin pages as if touching something sacred. She remembered the promises, and she prayed, no longer asking for rain, but asking for strength. "Lord, do not let me doubt your love. Even if the rain does not come, do not let me forget who you are." They were at their limit. It was no longer a test of patience. It was a test of survival. The desert had entered their very souls, and the silence of the sky was deafening. Joshua looked at his empty hands, at the empty land, at the empty sky, and felt an emptiness that seemed to swallow him whole. The 10th year was ending, and with it, it seemed, the last drop of hope would also end. The music subtly changes, a note of mystery, a solitary string. And it was exactly there, my friend, my daughter, in the driest part of the soul, at the bottom of the pit of despair, that something different happened. It wasn't thunder, it wasn't a cloud. The sky remained the same, a merciless, steely blue. Joshua was doing what he did every day, walking through the barren property. He liked to go to the edge of the land, where there was a fig tree, a huge fig tree, but it wasn't withered because of the 10-year drought. No, that fig tree had been dead for maybe 30-40 years, since Joshua was young. A lightning bolt had split it in 2 decades ago. It was a tree skeleton, a monument to death. The twisted grey branches looked like claws scratching the sky. It didn't have a leaf, it didn't have bark, it was just dead wood. Joshua stopped, as he always did, to look at that skeleton. And that's when he heard it. Plock. A sound he hadn't heard in so long that his brain took a while to process. The sound of a drop. He looked up at the sky. Nothing, clear. "It's all in my head," he thought. "The sun is making me hear things." He turned to leave. Plock, plock. He stopped. His heart raced. Where was that sound coming from? He approached the dead fig tree. He looked at the dusty ground at the base of the tree, and he saw it. A small, dark spot in the dust. Damp. He looked up, following the dead trunk. And then his eyes, old and tired, focused on something that shouldn't be there. On one of the highest branches, the ones that looked like charcoal, there was a leaf. It wasn't a dry leaf, it was a green leaf. A green so bright, so vibrant, it seemed like a mistake. It seemed to hurt the eyes amidst so much grey and brown. A single stubborn little fig leaf. Joshua shuddered. How? From a dead tree? Dead for 30 years? He approached. He placed his trembling hand on the trunk. The trunk was dry, cold, dead. But from somewhere, that leaf had come. He looked at the ground. Again, the damp patch. Was it dew? But how, if the night had been dry and hot? He touched the leaf. It was real, it was soft, and it was damp. Joshua felt no joy. He felt confusion, fear. Was it a delusion? That sun, that thirst, that pain. Were they finally driving him insane? He looked around. The silence, the dryness, and that green leaf. Impossible. He didn't tell Amelia. He kept it to himself. He went home that day with a tightness in his chest. It wasn't hope. It was astonishment. What was that? What kind of sign was that, born of death and not of the sky he watched so closely? The world seemed to have turned upside down. That sheet of paper was absurd. A green comma in the middle of a long book of dust. What did it mean? The music grows slightly in intensity, the mystery deepens. Joshua didn't sleep that night. He tossed and turned on the straw bed, the sound of an imaginary drop of water dripping from his head. Plock. And the image of that green leaf. He tried to convince himself it was a mistake, that some bird, but which bird, had dropped a seed there, and that the dew, but which dew, had made it sprout. But the leaf wasn't on the ground. It was on the branch, on the dead branch. Before sunrise he got up. He didn't go to the gate to look at the sky. He went straight to the dead fig tree. Amelia, noticing her husband's absence in bed, followed him from a distance, a shawl draped over her shoulders. Joshua arrived, and what he saw made his jaw drop. It wasn't just one leaf anymore. There were three green, lush leaves, as if mocking the drought around them. And the sound, plate, plate. It was faster. There was a small puddle of moisture at the base of the tree. Amelia approached silently. She saw the astonishment on her husband's face. She looked at the leaves. She looked at the dampness. She said nothing. She asked no questions. She simply observed. Then Amelia did something that, to Joshua, seemed like madness. She turned and walked resolutely back home. Joshua stood there watching, uncomprehending. Minutes later she returned, and she was carrying the clay water jug in her hands, the jug that held their water, the drinking water, the water they rationed, drop by drop. "Amelia, what are you going to do?" Joshua asked, his voice hoarse. "This is our water." Amelia did not answer. She approached the base of the dead fig tree. She knelt in the dust, and, with a calmness that Joshua did not understand, she poured the precious water onto the dry root of the dead tree. "Amelia, no!" Joshua shouted. "You're wasting it!" She finished pouring. She placed the empty jug on the ground. She touched the root, and said, more to herself than to him, "I don't know, Joshua. My heart told me to." That night, something else happened. Amelia dreamed. She dreamed of her grandmother, the woman who planted that fig tree so many years ago. In the dream, her grandmother was beside the tree, not dead but laden with figs. And her grandmother smiled at Amelia and said, "The drought is long, my granddaughter, but the root is deeper than the drought. The root still lives." Amelia woke up in the middle of the night. The room was dark. She touched Joshua's face. He was awake. "Joshua," she whispered, her voice trembling for the first time, I dreamed about Grandma. She said that the root lives. The connection. The first sign of the leaf. Amelia's impulse to give the precious water, and now the dream. For the first time in 10 years, Joshua and Amelia didn't look to the sky. They looked at each other. The drought had killed the branches, had killed everything on the surface. But the miracle was coming from below. It was coming from the place they had given up on. What would they find at dawn? The music is now filled with anticipation, suspense, and rising emotion. This is the climax. They didn't wait for the sun to rise. In that darkness that precedes dawn, at that hour they called the mouth of the night, the two old people walked hand in hand, without a lamp, guided only by their newfound faith. The air was still, hot. The smell of dust was the same. The sky was clear. The stars were beginning to fade. Nothing, absolutely nothing, suggested rain. But when they were about 20 meters from the dead fig tree, they stopped. They listened. It was no longer one plate. Plate. My friend. The sound was of water. Running water, not a river, no, but a thread. A clear, musical sound, one they hadn't heard in a decade, a sound that seemed to tear through the silence of that land. Joshua started running like he hadn't run in 30 years. Amelia came behind him, her heart pounding in her throat. They arrived, and they fell to their knees. The fig tree, the dead fig tree. From a thick crack in the main trunk, in that grey and cracked wood, water gushed forth. It wasn't a drip, it was a flow. A constant, clear flow that shone like silver in the dim light of dawn. The water trickled down the dead trunk, and where it touched, small green leaves exploded, as if life had been trapped and was being released in that instant. The water flowed down, hitting the root that Amelia had wet, and forming a puddle, a large puddle, and from the puddle the water overflowed and began to run, a small trickle of hope, carving a new path in the old dust. Joshua was trembling so much he couldn't move. He looked at the water, he looked at the sky, he looked at the tree. It made no sense. It was impossible. Amelia, with tears washing the dust from her face, crawled to the base. She cupped her hands beneath the stream. The water filled her hands. She brought them to her face and drank. She closed her eyes, and a sob of joy, of relief, of 10 years of pain being washed away, escaped her chest. "Drink, Joshua," she cried, laughing and crying. "Drink! It's sweet!" Joshua crawled over. He rested his head against the dead trunk of the fig tree, and he felt it. The trunk was vibrating, alive, and the water was cold, on a day that already promised 40 degrees. He opened his mouth and let the miracle water flow straight from the tree into his parched throat. It was water, real water. They prayed for 10 years for water to fall from above, and God, in his time, in his wisdom, made the water spring forth from below. He didn't use the clouds. He used the dead root. He didn't send the solution they expected. He sent the solution they needed from the most impossible place they could imagine. They stayed there, huddled together in the fresh mud, beneath the fig tree that was alive again, while the sun rose. The sun that for 10 years had been the enemy, now it beat upon the drops of water and made them shine like diamonds. The drought hadn't ended anywhere in the world. But there, in that patch of ground, the spring had gushed forth. The music became soft, reflective, full of human warmth. Oh, my dear, what a story! How beautiful is the work of God! That water that sprang from the dead fig tree. It not only quenched the thirst of Joshua and Amelia, it not only watered their land, above all, it watered their faith, which was almost dead. And you know, how many times aren't we like Joshua? We spend our lives looking up, looking to the sky, hands clasped, asking, "Lord, send rain, solve this problem, heal this illness, restore this marriage, open this job opportunity." We define it as a miracle. He must to be. We say to God from where the blessing has to come. It has to be this way, Lord. It has to come from there. It has to be that dark cloud. And because we get so focused on the rain that we think we need, we don't notice the green leaf sprouting in the impossible place. The story of Joshua and Amelia teaches me that God is the God of deep roots. He is the God who specializes in bringing life out of death. Their miracle wasn't obvious. It wasn't in the clouds. The miracle was hidden. It was in what everyone, including themselves, had already called dead. Maybe you're there today. Maybe you're in your 10th year of drought. It may not be a drought of water like theirs, but maybe it's a drought in your heart, a drought in your home, a dryness in your soul. And you're looking at the sky, and the sky seems made of bronze. The silence seems to scream that he has forgotten you. My son, my daughter, pay attention. Could it be that your answer isn't coming from the rain you're waiting for? Could it be that God is causing a green leaf to sprout in a place you've already given up on? In a situation you've declared dead? In a relationship you think is beyond repair? In a dream you've buried under so much dust? Faith, that faith that God gives us, is like the root of that fig tree. Even if the surface is dead, cracked, dry, the root, deep down where no one sees, it is alive, and it only awaits His touch. I really wanted to hear your story. I wanted you to look at your life right now. What is the rain you've been praying so insistently for? And tell me, have you noticed, or perhaps are you noticing now, God making water spring forth from a place that seemed impossible in your life? Share your testimony here in the comments. Let's talk. Your story, your green leaf, might be exactly the sign that someone else in our family needs to see today, so they don't give up. If this message touched your heart, leave your amen below. Give it a like so this message of hope reaches more thirsty hearts. And of course, if you're not yet part of our little corner of faith, subscribe to the channel. Come sit here with me more often so we can share these blessings. May God be with you, my dear, and never, never forget. Don't just look at the clouds. Look at the roots.